if you'd like to put in the chat where you guys are from, where you're tuning in from, we'd love to, and hear a little bit about who you are, just while we're all getting set up, and we'll probably in about 30 seconds, we'll get right into it. Give us a bit of a thumbs up, tell us how you're feeling about this panel tonight. Okay. All right, so kia ora everyone. My name is Lola and I'm your MC for tonight. I'll give a bit more of an intro later on, but so Keith, we're going to start off with a karakia if you would like to lead us in that.
Oh yeah, please bow your heads for the karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hia ke ana te atakura, e tio, e huka, e hohu, humi e, hui e, tai ki e.
Kia ora, so Keith, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for that. All right, so welcome everyone to the Why Vote Youth panel. Tonight we have got some amazing young rangatahi and politicians with us, and I'm really excited to be on with these amazing people online tonight and hear a bit more about what their views and opinions on lowering the voting age. So I'll give you a bit of a short context on Youth Week. So the theme this year is Rangatira mo āpopo, rangatira I tēnei rā. So leaders of tomorrow, leaders of today. So basically saying that rangatahi are leaders of today and not just tomorrow. So Youth Week is a nationwide festival of events organised by young New Zealanders to celebrate the talents, passion and successes of rangatahi all across the country. Youth Week aims to amplify young people's valuable contributions to society by supporting them to design, deliver and evaluate all aspects of the week. So something that we are doing for Youth Week is this Why Vote panel, and it's an amazing event, and I'm really grateful to Save the Children New Zealand, Generation Hope and Make It 16 for helping us put this together, and of course the politicians and the Make It 16 representatives for being here tonight with us. So kia ora everyone, my name is Lola, I'm 14 years old and I'm from Wanganui. I am a Generation Hope Youth Ropu member alongside Alicia and Sakith, who you will meet in a moment. I can't wait to get stuck into the discussion tonight and learn a bit more about lowering the voting age and hearing all our panelists' views. So a little bit of a format for the evening. We will hand over to the panel to introduce themselves soon. And then we will have 2 prepared questions and we'll pose those to the panel and have a bit of a discussion for about 20 minutes. And then you guys who are tuning in will have an opportunity to take some questions from you and pose those to our panel members. So feel free to comment throughout this discussion with any thoughts, ideas, questions you have, and we'll pick out a couple towards the end. We do just have a few ground rules for engagement. So of course we understand that lowering the voting age is quite a controversial issue, but ensuring that we're engaging in a compassionate way and respecting the panel and one another. We will remove any comments that are disrespectful to anyone here or disrespectful in general, and may remove you from the webinar if need be. Let's be respectful and engage in a constructive discussion and learn more about lowering the voting age. And of course, another big thank you to everyone for being here tonight. We couldn't have done it without you. You're all so appreciated. Okay, so we're going to hand it over to the panel to do a little introduction. We're first going to hand over to the politicians, then we'll go to Make It 16 members, and then we will go to Generation Hope Ropu members. So Mea Moku, Sophie and Apulu, you are up first. Mea Moku, would you like to start us off?
Hey, kia ora tate katoa, kia ora e te whānau. Ko Moko Tepene a tōku ingoa, kua hau te kahika o te hiku o te ika. My name is Moko Tepene, I'm the Mayor of the Far North. I'm proudly from Northern, from both of its coasts, the East and West Coast. And yeah, it's really great to be on the panel tonight to, just share my support. Let's make it 16, Aotearoa. Time is now. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, thank you. All right, and Sophie, if you'd like to go next.
Yeah, kia ora i te whānau, ko Sophie Handford tōku ingoa no Paikakira ki Aho. I am Sophie, I'm a Kapiti Coast District Councillor, was elected back in 2019 at the age of 18 and had just been a part of coordinating what was one of New Zealand's largest ever single day strikes, led entirely by young people from Aotearoa, 170,000 people out on the streets for climate justice. So like Moko said, now's the time. Now is, we've got a really awesome opportunity in front of us that we're all super engaged in, which is really awesome. So I'm really looking forward to the kōrero and to hearing what you have to say and figuring out how we can kind of work collectively to achieve something that'll be really important for both our generation, but also those who follow. Kia ora.
Oh, ngā mihi, Sophie, thank you. And Apulu, we'll hand over to you now.
Ia tēnā koutou katoa, ko au te hea mana te pōri arohe o Otara ki Papatoetoi, ko Apulu Reese Aotearoa tōku ingoa. Ia mālo lovely soifua maoma le langi mama. Warm Pacific greetings on this cold wintry night from South Auckland, the soul of the Auckland super city. Talofa, my name is Apulu Reese Aotearoa. I'm the chair of the Otara Papatoetoi local board from Auckland Council. And this is, I've been in elected position since 2013, but I've been as a chair of this local board since last term. And I guess a little bit of context, there's about 90,000 people in Otara Papatoetoi local board itself. And so that's probably as big as some of our rural towns. So there's a lot of people that we have to look after in our local board area. And I'm keen to make sure that all the voices are amplified, including our youth. So that's why I was keen to get onto this panel and have this discussion with our youth.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your introduction. Much appreciated. All right, we will hand it over to the Make It 16 members. Sage, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, kia ora, ko Sage tōku ingoa no Kirikiri Aho. I'm 17, I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a Make It 16 spokesperson. I'm really excited to be on the panel tonight because, of course, like as has already been mentioned, youth are already so involved in politics, so involved in our local communities, that it's really important that that's validated by the ability to vote. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. And Thomas.
Kia ora, I'm Thomas. I live in Rangatahi, Christchurch. I'm 15 years old. And like Sage, I'm also a spokesperson for Make It 16. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here tonight, to be given a space on this panel to discuss youth issues, because youth issues are the issues that matter, the issues that linger, and the issues that need to be addressed. Kia ora.
Oh, ngā mihi, thank you. And Alicia, your turn.
Kia ora, my name is Alicia. I'm one of the Generation Hope ambassadors. I'm 15 years old and I'm from Auckland. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm on this panel because I'm passionate about youth empowerment and having youth voice heard and amplified within our communities.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Keith, would you like to introduce yourself?
Kia ora whānau, I am Keith. I'm 15 and I'm also from South Auckland, like Apolu. So I'm on this panel because I believe that youth and 16-year-olds, it's about time that their voice is heard in Parliament. They've been functioning members of our society for so long now, and it's about time that they deserve their voice.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you so much for your introductions. They were beautiful. I love learning a little bit more about each and every one of you. We will hand it over to Thomas, and we are going to learn a little bit more about Make It 16 and their campaign and their mahi. So Thomas, take it away.
Yeah, thanks. So Make It 16 is a non-partisan and youth-led campaign. We chase the uplifting and strengthening of youth voice by advocating the lowering of the voting age to 16. In the past 3 years since our campaign began, we've won a Supreme Court case on the basis that it is age discrimination to not let 16-year-olds vote, as held up by the Bill of Rights Act. We've gained over 7,000 signatures on our first petition that we handed into Parliament a few months ago. We've handed in many open letters and we've submitted countless times to select committees using the channels that are available to 16 and 17-year-olds currently. And all of this to convince the government and the public that we should lower the voting age. And this fight has not been in vain. We have been so incredibly successful that a bill will be drafted this year to finally lower the voting age to 16 in local elections. But the battle is ongoing. There is still a lot of work to be done and it is certainly not over. So we will continue to do what we have continuously done, and hopefully very soon we will see the real results that we so desperately require. Thank you.
Oh, I was muted. Thank you so much. And yes, we're absolutely backing you guys all the way there. Okay, so we are off to a great start. Amy has put a link in the chat. You can learn more about Make It 16 at that link. Just a quick reminder that any questions that you guys tuning in may have, please pop them in the Q&A chat and we will try to pick a few to answer at the very end. And yeah, we'd really like to know your thoughts and opinions, so keep going with that. Okay, so here is the first question, and this one is directed at Mea Moko, Sage, and Sakith. And Mea Moko, if you'll start us off. And the question is, what difference do you think it would make if 16-year-olds were able to vote in Aotearoa?
Oh, thank you for the question. Do you know what? The past 11 years now, I've been, well, until I decided to become a mayor, but I've been a teacher in secondary schools, Te Reo Māori, English, a little bit of science, actually a little bit of everything almost. They threw me in. But I've just seen the power that Rangatahi voice, the intelligence, the understanding, the empathy, the sympathy, the everything. Man, it's going to make Aotearoa a better place by ensuring that that voice is captured in deciding on the leaders who govern in these spaces. It's huge. The other thing too is if we look at local government elections, right? At our last year's election, voter turnout was only 40%. Horrendous, down from 42%. In the far north, we're celebrating because we're above. We did better than the rest of the country because we got 42% of voter turnout. That means that like out of 10 people, 6 people in the far north didn't actually vote. That's horrendous. But we know why. We know some of the reasons why. Some of the reasons why is because people just don't feel like they have a voice. If people don't voting behaviour or civics education, and I'm a strong believer in making sure that we've got strong civics education that goes hand in hand with lowering the voting age. If you start good voting, but civics behaviours, participating in the processes and the system that we have from a younger age, then that's going to flow on through. And we know that those statistics are just going to continue to rise as young leaders fill in all of these spaces. So I'm all for making it 16. I have been since I made it onto council in our 2019 elections. I was the youngest ever councillor then at the extremely young age of 28. Old as. And now I'm the youngest ever mayor in the far north at the age of 31. But it's high time that we change this. The average age of elected members in local government is between 50 and 64 years old. We need Rangatahi to be able to vote for the leaders in these spaces, and then to also get into these spaces like Soph. I'm such a fanboy, Apunu, massive fanboy of our young elected members network. There are only 14%, we haven't had the latest stats, but the last election, only 14% of local elected members are under the age of 40. And we're the young elected members network. So I'm all for it. Let's go.
Oh, ngā mihi. Maybe Sage, would you like to maybe expand a bit on that? Is there anything you can add to that, korero?
Yeah, so tautoko moko. And also we've seen in other countries that have a voting age of 16, we've seen so many positives in terms of voter turnout and no negatives. So like that's countries like Austria, Brazil, et cetera, et cetera. And so it'll be great to follow that precedent and see those here as well. Some other things that we've got that would change is that we would finally have the human right to vote would be available to 16-year-olds. which is wonderful because we know that you're not supposed to be able to face age-based discrimination on your human rights after the age of 16, which is the basis of the Supreme Court case, which we won. And so there needs to be a really outstanding reason for us not to be able to change that voting age, which there just isn't. There isn't a reason outstanding enough for that. Also, this is a treaty issue because on average, Māori are younger than the rest of the population, which means that disproportionately they're unable to vote, and that really, really needs to be fixed, which just a very small step in terms of bettering our implementation of Te Tiriti o Waitangi would be to change the voting age to 16.
Interesting that you bring up Te Tiriti and how that is affected by not lowering the voting age as well. I didn't know that. You learn something new every day. Thank you. So there is kind of a little bit of a second part to that question. And so Keith, I'd like to hand that to you to answer. And the question is, why is there a need to lower the voting age? Would you like to take it away for that one?
So, the need exists, and, that's why we're here. I think the needs are, first of all, it's because we want 16-year-olds, they're more involved in politics, environment, everything than the generations before us. And so the need is for us to have a voice in parliament, in things that matter to us and impact our day-to-day lives. There is a need to do it because it is like a lacking. Voting is a basic right that all adults have. 16-year-olds, they move out. They basically are adults. And so it is the essential right to vote, basically.
Thank you for that point. Yeah, okay, really interesting. Maybe Mea Moko, do you have anything to add, like on the why is there a need to lower the voting age?
Oh, yeah. Do you know what? We trust we legally, through legislation, trust 16-year-olds to drive on our roads. We have them pay taxes because they can get jobs. They can leave school. They can go into training or into work or into anything like that. You can legally give consent at the age of 16. So I do not see the reason why we are holding 16 and 17-year-olds back from being able to choose the people who actually make up the laws on the roads that they are legally allowed to drive on the taxes that they have to pay if they have jobs. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, So we say, oh, actually, you're old enough for these things, but also you're not old enough to vote for the people who make the rules that you have to follow and participate in. It doesn't make any sense to me. So many reasons why we need to lower it.
Many interesting points there. Thank you. And I'm seeing lots of support in the chat. Keep it up for everyone watching at home. It's amazing to see all your little emojis coming through. Thank you for those points. Really interesting. I definitely learned something there. And I think that we're right on time. We're going according to schedule, which is great. So we will jump into question number 2. So this one, just another quick reminder, the Q&A is open. Put your questions in there. We've got a bit to cover tonight, but we'd really love to hear your thoughts. So this question is for Sophie, Apulu, Thomas, and Alicia. And we will start off with Sophie for this one. So the question is, what new perspective would youth bring to the table if given a voice? Can you maybe expand on that?
Yeah, kia ora for the question. I think kind of as the panelists who spoke so eloquently just before and so incredibly passionately around kind of the energy and aspiration that I think young people have in absolute spades. Like if we look to our leaders currently, in the midst of the massive crises that we're in, we saw today the budget being announced and our climate spending is less than it has been for the last 2 years when climate change is ever intensifying. So I think the perspective that young people will bring is an understanding of what's truly at stake, because we know that it's our future. Decisions that are being made now not only shape our future, but they quite literally create it, because we have the power to do everything that we need to now to really to build a climate just and an equitable, resilient, connected, sustainable future. And so I think that that's really the perspective that is so valuable, is that kind of intergenerational nature of decision making, which when we look, to examples of or through Te Ao Māori and the ability to acknowledge kind of whakapapa and the journey of communities and of history and then into time and how that shapes our future, it's very much kind of recognised. But I think, yeah, we've got a bit of a way to go to truly embody that. And I think the beautiful thing about lowering of the voting age and the potential for it is that young people are already building their own tables right now. And so, yes, young people can bring things to the tables of power, so to speak, but actually we already do have our own tables that we're almost building ourselves out of necessity, because our leaders aren't leading in the ways that maybe many of us would expect that they should be in times of need for Aotearoa New Zealand and for our communities. So I think we'd bring that sense of urgency, sense of transformation and courage, and the ability to kind of transcend politics of the day and think about kind of the longevity of our decisions and the impacts of them.
Ngā mihi, Sophie, that was a great response, thank you. And it's interesting, you talk about how we're like building our own tables, and you see, youth creating petitions and going to the government already and organizing strikes and writing articles and out there in the community, but we're not allowed to vote yet. And yeah, it's great points that you brought up there. Apollo, would you like to talk to that a bit too?
Yeah, and I guess it kind of goes back to what was mentioned in the last question about a lot of our people are disenfranchised. For example, in my local board, we are the youngest local board in Auckland. The median age is 29 years old, whereas the average or the median for the rest of Auckland is 35 years old. And so already we don't have the youth represented nor able to vote, and we have a large proportion of our people that are young. So we're not representing our people properly, and there's diversity in decision making. And so that's what's missing, is we don't have that diversity. We don't have the fresh ideas as spoken to by Sophie. At the moment, the most reliable voters come from one particular demographic, and there's structurally favoring one type of demographic. And I'm sure, and in my experience, a lot of elected people, they are sympathetic to young people, but we're not young people. I'm 40 years old now. I'm youth adjacent, and so I'm already excluding myself from being able to talk on behalf of youth issues. And so already we need to ensure that young people are coming in to these spaces, because we all have to move along, and we need to make sure that those that have the answers to modern issues. When I grew up, there was no such thing as social media. I didn't have any of that to worry about, but these are real issues that young people experience, and a lot of us older people only think of it or experience through others, through our own family members. And so that also brings about possibilities of and answers to the issues that we have that many of us older people have not considered. So yeah, I think we really are missing out on having that freshness, the fresh ideas, the drive, better understanding, in particular because we live in a changing modern world.
Yes. Maybe Thomas, is there anything you can add to that or expand on that more in your view?
Yeah, so those are a lot of very brilliant points. And being youth, we aren't held back by the historical and outdated rhetoric that is so often echoed in the halls of regress. Every issue that we fail to address today, which there are many, do linger in the long term for the leaders of the future to deal with. Some issues will always descend the generational tree and will always be long-term problems. But at the very least, we can help mitigate those issues so the leaders of the future don't have to be cleaning up the mess in such a catastrophic way that we are on track to having them do. A major issue that gets put on the back burner because of the lack of representation for the people who will be dealing with the consequences are, of course, climate change, as was mentioned before. We can already see today oceans are warming, becoming more acidic, ice caps are melting, sea levels are rising. The results after lack of action from what only a few decades of us knowing about this issue are far less than ideal, and a few more decades, they will be absolutely catastrophic. Our generation will bear the brunt of these consequences if we don't act decisively. So it is crucial that our voices are heard in these types of discussions around these types of problems of which the consequences are so severe. Our lives, our communities, and our families all depend on our futures. So I question, why shouldn't we help shape them?
Wow, that was a very powerful point to end on. I feel like I need to sit with that a moment almost, like the ending was very good. Thank you. Amazing. Okay, so there's a kind of flip side to that. And what perspective would what issues do you feel are missing since youth aren't being heard at the table? And I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but maybe Alicia, is there anything that you could expand on there?
Yeah, I think there are plenty of issues that majority of youth would really have a first-hand encounter with that older generations might interpret differently or have a different opinion on. So this is like regarding issues such as mental health, youth crime, and certainly, as Thomas said, the urgency of needing a change for our current environmental state. So we would bring a new perspective that older generations may not understand, as we live in the same country, but we've grown up with different societal expectations. So views on issues may be outdated, and some issues that were once overlooked are now being brought to light in our generation. So making the voting age 16 would bring more diversity to the table, and it would be a way for youth to be able to express themselves politically, and it would be an excellent way for our government to have a better understanding of what you think of the lives that we are leading in Aotearoa.
Absolutely. And you can even see the difference between how like the issues that you might vote on, Alicia, compared to Sophie, for example, and how that all changes even though it's only a few years difference. And so that's it's really important to have that representation at all levels. Thank you so much, Alicia, for that note. Is there anything does anyone have anything like burning that they want to add to that? Sophie, you look like you might.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something following on from Alicia's kōrero just then. It's kind of what really sprung to mind was from hearing you, kōrero Alicia, was nothing about us without us. And there are so many decisions that are being made, as you speak about, in terms of youth mental health support or access to primary health care or access to emergency housing, all of those sorts of transitional housing, access to jobs for those who aren't currently employed or in training. And those decisions are being made without us, but they're about us. And so the audacity of our leaders to sit around those tables and not and to know that democracy isn't fully inclusive of the voices of Rangatahi is kind of not okay. So yeah, nothing about us without us, I think, is a pretty general principle. And for that to happen, we just need to make a more inclusive and representative democracy, and lowering the voting age is, the easiest and most logical way to do that.
Yeah, you're getting lots of support from the chat there, Sophie. People are hyping you up. Thank you for those points. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add? Is anyone feeling like they really need to talk about something that someone's touched on in the last couple of minutes? Otherwise, we can move on to some more questions. Nothing super pressing. Okay, so another reminder, the Q&A is open, and I think we will now move on to the first question that we have from the audience. And maybe I will direct this one at Apulu and Sakith if you'd like to answer this one. So the question is, from your experience as young people, do you feel the government listens to young people enough? And maybe, Sakith, you can give a perspective on that as a young person, and Apulu, you can give a perspective on that as someone who is in government and is trying to listen to young people. Sakith, would you like to start us off maybe?
Yep. So I think the government listens to adults who are associated with young people on issues that impact young people the most. For example, what do we say? There's incidents of vaping and drugs in schools, right? But who does the government listen to? The Ministry of Education listens to the principals, adults speaking for the youth. I can give many more examples, but I think the government is doing a good job at addressing the issues that impact youth, but it's not doing a good job directly engaging with youth.
Yes, absolutely. Apollo, would you like to maybe talk about your experience there?
Yeah, I think putting it crudely in terms of politics, it's a numbers game. And so we often find that politicians start putting up policies or voting in the direction that those that vote. And so if young people aren't part of that voting structure, they're not going to necessarily take consideration of what their wants and needs and so forth. And so already we're cutting them out. So it's a nice to have putting it crudely for politicians that are self-serving, that want to be voted in next time, that they are going to only put more emphasis on those that are going to vote. So my own experience in local board, we have a lot of people that are older than me. I'm 40 and I was the youngest in our local board, and that's so bad. It's so bad to see that consider a 40-year-old as a young person, but it just shows that those that are represented, those that are elected, are from a certain demographic, and therefore are not going to represent our young people and allies. Those that are, I probably should call myself youth adjacent now. That's all good, but that can't be a substitute for actual young voices, young people being elected into decision making.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you there on that last point. Namahi, thank you for your response. Thomas, maybe what do you think? Do you think that the government listens to young people enough?
So of course, Make It 16 does use the measures in which the government has to listen to us through select committees, which is our rights as citizens and residents of New Zealand. But the issue lies with the fact that there is still no legal, what's the right word? Influence, I guess, or legal incentive for the government to listen to us, because when we become their employers as the voting public of New Zealand, they do have to win over our support if they want to retain their jobs. And they don't actually have to do that with select committees. They can listen to us. They can choose to implement some of our proposals. They can choose to discuss it, but they don't have to. And that is where the issue lies with me. And when we have such large issues, such as was mentioned by Alicia, mental health, climate change, even the education system too, we have such big issues such as those on the table, and when there is no legal mandate from Rangatahi, that is where the issue lies with me, comes with me.
Yes. Is there anyone that has a pressing point they would like to add to that at all? No, all good. We have another question from the audience, and Sophie and Moko, this is directed at you. Could you speak about how you got your local young people pumped about local elections? Talk to us about kind of your process and how you managed that.
Oh, see, because I'm a mayor, Sophie's like, I better let him go first. Hierarchical kind of things, eh? So no. Do you know what? I never, like, when I first decided to stand for council, it was like a last minute decision because I was fed up thinking that council didn't do enough or was too slow. So rather than moan about it, I'll get in and do something about it. And then I did some homework, thought, oh, I can get in. I only need 1,500 votes. I've got 2,000 cousins. So like it's sure thing. But actually had to do a really strong campaign. I never thought like, oh, I'm going to set out to try and like bring youth on board. But I went out and said, I'm going to genuinely put myself out there and across all channels of communication to say to people, hey, this is who I am, this is my background, this is what I represent, and I want to represent you as well and your voice, just in a genuine way, and so I don't think that my ward that I originally stood for, Kaikohe Hokianga, which is Kaikohe Township, which is where I live and is the seat of the whānau district, is the youngest town in the country, the youngest median age in the country. But I don't think that anyone had ever sort of utilised like just social media for for campaigning. I was like, oh, maybe I should make a Facebook page to like tell people what I'm all about. So I did everything, you know, like the billboards, the meetings, social media, all of that sort of stuff in a genuine way. And people switched on and ended up getting in. Now, this is where I reckon being a self-serving politician for me I could really benefit. When I first got into council, I got in on 13 votes in the first count. And I was like, oh my gosh, lucky I spoke to those last 13 people. Do you know how many 16, 17, and 18-year-olds I've taught though, who could have voted for me? It would have been a sure win, you know? So self-serving, yeah, you know, like, I'm going to be your champ. Vote me in. I don't want to be waiting, trying to hustle up some last minute votes. I'm there for you. I think that if we empower 16-year-olds with the right to vote in local elections and central government elections, do you know what that means? It means that we're going to have to start noticing you. We're going to have to start saying, actually, this is what I'm going to do for you. This is how I'm going to do it for you, because Reese is right. When you look at who votes and how they vote, that is where, you know, that is where the attention goes. The attention doesn't go to our rangatahi because you're an afterthought, to be honest. But if you've got the power, we'll just wait and see all of the at a central government level, how all the policies will suddenly start to change, because they're going to have to say, this is what we're doing for your demographic. Same at local government, you know, it's going to be like, do you know what? This is how we're going to have to include you in the processes for the $13.5 million new library and civic hub we're going to have in Kaikohe, rather than just say, oh, you're a tick box. Thank you. Just I spoke to you, I ticked the box. Rather than being disenfranchised in that way, it's like, oh, wow, we better start listening. Yeah. Kia ora, Soph. By the way, actually, I'll just add something really quickly. So Soph was our youngest elected member at our last elections, and second to her was another councillor who I'm a real fanboy of. That's Councillor Fisher Wang from Rotorua Lakes Council. He's second youngest in the country, and his council through Te Arawa started a hashtag that our Young Elected Members Network jumped on, and it's hashtag mokopuna decisions. And you've all brought it up here tonight. It's about making decisions that are not short term, not medium term. They're the decisions so that we're good ancestors for our mokopuna who are coming after us. And isn't it so funny, right, that our youngest, you know, who you think, oh, you're not old enough to make decisions, you're not old enough for this and for that, you're like screaming out loud, like, listen to us, we're here, we want a better planet, not only for us because we're still going to be around, but for the generations to come after us. Beautiful thing. Kia ora, Soph.
Kia ora, hare to follow moko, and yeah, awesome plug there for the Young Elected Members crew, and also for the mokopuna decision kind of kaupapa and what that represents and means. Oh yeah, really, I was so like engrossed in listening to your kōrero that I didn't really think about what I was going to say, if I'm being completely frank. But I think, yeah, when I decided to run for council back in 2019, what made it really awesome and fun and also meaningful and powerful, our campaign, was the fact that we had a massive crew of young people kind of volunteering as a part of it. So when I say, you know, I was elected onto council, really I'm here as almost a culmination of, or a representation of, the over 20 young people who are a part of my campaign team from right across the district. So I think a really awesome way of engaging young people in local government is through changing the way that we perceive governance, specifically local government, central government, but even like boards and governance in different spheres as well, because just because things are being done this way currently doesn't mean that it's the way that they have to continue being done. And I think there's a lot of kind of apathy that exists around, I specifically found this around local government, just a real feeling that local government is pale, stale mail, it's slow, it's bureaucratic, nothing will ever happen. And what I really tried to stress is that it doesn't have to be like that. Like, if we get enough of us around the table who want to change the system will change, because it's people that make change, not policy. And so if we get the people around the tables who are speaking to making mokopuna decisions and who are putting that into action, then things will change. We don't have to be apathetic. We don't have to sit on the sidelines and just complain, as Moko talked about, or see these spaces as not for us, because the more that those of us in this kōrero get into those spaces, the more we can then leave the door open for others to then kind of create those pathways for young people to take over youth domination.
Woo! Yes, I really resonated with me when you said it was like mostly youth that were on your campaign team. And I actually remember, Sophie, when you were first running for council, and I'm not from Kapiti, but I do have family there, and so I remember seeing like billboards and things and be like, oh my goodness, that's so inspiring, because she's like closer to my age than all of these other like older politicians, and it was just breath of fresh air. Which is amazing. Thank you, Sophie, for your insight there. So we've got another question. What is your advice to the government on changing the voting age to 16 and 16 plus? And then I think we will direct this question to Apulu. You can take this one away if you'd like. So what advice would you give the government on lowering the voting age?
Yeah, I think, I guess, first of all, the Supreme Court decision is a really good starting place where it says it's a fundamental right. And so I think that justifies why it should be changed in legislation. And then I guess it's it's trying to convince those in power now to make that legislative change, because it just, yeah, it irks me to think that we've had a declaration by the Supreme Court to say that it's a fundamental right for under 16s to vote. To under 16s. But yet our politicians don't have the guts to actually put that into legislative change. So it's then it becomes a campaign pressure. Email start ringing, all those great things that our young people are already doing, but also getting the allies, like I said, the people that are youth adjacent, those that agree with the purpose. And so it's a groundswell that can actually start knocking on doors, saying to politicians, saying to the ministers, hey, these are your voters, these are the people that are going to come into the next few years. Let's start actually putting this into legislation. So I think that's probably the political routers need some pushing by all the people that are supporting this kaupapa.
Yes, amazing. Thank you. Sage, do you maybe have something to add there? Do you have advice to the government on lowering the voting age?
I mean, I'd say do it, for sure. I mean, like, we've just got so many reasons. I think, so many of the individual reasons to lower the voting age could stand on their own and be their own justification. But I think the sheer amount of reasons that we have to lower the voting age to 16 is also another great reason that it needs to be done. And there's just so much urgency, especially, as we have this election coming up, it's time for the Labour government to make it so that to introduce a bill so that local elections will have the voting age lowered. We need this to be the last election where 16-year-olds can't vote. There's just there's no time to waste, really. We just really need this to happen. Yeah.
Mihi, thank you for your response. I wonder, we've had heaps of questions come through. One of the fans listening just said, just tell Chris Hipkins to do it now. I'll just find one more question. Okay. Here's the question. It feels as though there is fear with allowing young people to vote. Where do you think this comes from? Why is it there, and what can we do to overcome this and allow youth to vote? So maybe Alicia, do you have some thoughts on that? Where is this fear of allowing young people to vote coming from?
I think there's a stigma around adults thinking young people are so irresponsible and immature, but really a lot, like our youth has a lot of like a high intellect, a lot of intelligence, and our perspective is like valuable. So there is fear, but I think we should get the government to understand that we have a voice and youth should be empowered. Yeah.
Thank
Can I just
you.
jump
Yeah,
in there?
yeah,
Do you know what?
absolutely.
Just following on from that, Alicia, totally tautoko that. Do you know what? Age does not equal intelligence whatsoever. I remember like I remember turning 18, right? Thinking that suddenly I'd like you wake up in the morning and suddenly you have this new understanding or view of the world. Hell, that didn't change when I turned 21, when I turned 28, when I turned 30, when I turned 31, or when I turned 32. Like you do have experiences that bring on different understandings, but who's to say that a 16-year-old hasn't been through significant things that could make them a lot more wiser than someone my own age? Age does not equal intelligence whatsoever. So I totally support you in that space. One of the exciting things that I'm looking forward to seeing is at our local government New Zealand annual general meeting, we at our local government level put up remits. Remits are what we want local government New Zealand to focus on the government with. There is very likely going to be a remit in the space so that we can see the support from all 78 councils in the space to make it 16. So we know that that's in the line. But what the whole hard thing for me is that it's very easy in these spaces to push things out. So, okay, we'll give you a little bit of a carrot right now, but we're going to keep you waiting on the big one, which is central government. Because it's electoral reform, and if it needs to go through a referendum process, man, just do it right now. Like, we've got an election coming up. Everyone's going to be ticking a box. Do it now, like what's the bloody hold up? Why do we have to wait for it to go through? We'll trial it out with local government. When we look at the fear, I mean, we just went through huge shift in local government because we introduced Māori wards across our councils. Minister Mahuta allowed councils to enact Māori wards, structured off our Māori electoral seats, which have been around since for what, 154 years, 64 years, 54 years, something like that. Anyway, for a very extremely long time, right? So nothing new to as a way of local councils. One of the ways that we can honour Te Tiriti o Waitangi and ensuring that there is a Māori voice at the table. Now, huge opposition across the country because of a fear of we can't allow there to, we can't allow people on the Māori roll to vote for people who they want to represent them on council. We just can't do that. We're not going to do that. I see the same parallels when in this conversation we've been having. It's like, wow, it's the same thing. It's like it's disenfranchising a certain sector of our society because of a fear of the unknown or because it's different. If there's anything we need that young voice in here, and not to be afraid of change, not to be afraid of trying different things out. Because do you know what? If we carry on doing the same thing over and over again, we're going to get nowhere. We've got to be adaptable. We've got to be adaptable for our climate. We've got to be adaptable for our planet. We've got to be adaptable to new ideas. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, we can just change it back. But I know it won't.
Sorry, could I just add in there to the conversation? Totally don't talk about what's already been said, but I guess there's another group as well in terms of what they fear is that, as mentioned, I think in the comments about losing what they have, or the structures that are in place now favor them, and so you see this, for example, homeowners. It's taken a long time to get some rights for renters, and a lot of our young people are renters, and so the demographics that vote are those that are homeowners, and so for a long time the policy settings have favored them, and so that we need young people that are long-term thinking, as has been said, that aren't necessarily thinking about their own personal well-being, but everyone's well-being into the long term. So that's climate change, that's housing, that's te tiriti, that's equity. So all those sort of things, I think that's what they fear about it. But man, it's that we need to be thinking about outside our own squares and the future generations coming.
Also, if I could just jump in like super quickly on that point, definitely tautoko everything that everyone said. And I think that some of the fear comes from this idea that 16 and 17-year-olds are some like monolithic movement for the left. I'm sure that myself and a lot of the other people, even on this panel right now, could argue all day and all night about different things. And I think 130,000 new voters isn't enough to create a left bloc, but even within that 130,000 people, we're not all for one party for another. And there's definitely so much diversity of thought among us as well. So I just like to add that in there.
Yeah. Namahi, thank you for all your contributions, everyone, in that little question there. I am just conscious of time. It is 51 past 7. Time has absolutely flown by. So we will just wrap it up with a final thoughts from everyone. Maybe a message for people who are still thinking that 16 and 17-year-olds are too young to vote for whatever reason. What do you say to them? And maybe just a couple of sentences, keep it nice and short. And we will start with Sage.
Yeah, I mean, I just really think that I think anyone that has some really strong, just lingering idea that 16, 17-year-olds shouldn't be able to vote is to get out into these youth spaces and meet these people that you're saying shouldn't be able to vote. Because, I promise that, we're all leading movements, we're all taking so much part in queer activism and climate activism and disability activism everywhere that you can think of. There's so much that we're implementing into these spaces. And I think that just, if you can see that, if you can listen to our voices, you'll see that we should be able to vote.
Thank you, Sage. Thomas.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'd say literally think of the children. Think of the generations that come after the generations that we have right now. Think of what will happen if the issues that are affecting us today go unsolved, go ignored. Think of a world in which they have to clean that up. That is absolutely not ideal. And so, yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, great last thoughts so far. Alicia, would you like to leave us with some parting gifts of words?
Yeah, us youth are the leaders of today and tomorrow. So lowering the voting age is a way to empower us and offer a new perspective.
So Keith.
Well, I just love what everyone said before. I think, it's a way for us to have our voice heard by the people who need to hear it. Politicians are our servants, we're not their servants. They need us to exist. And how we're so involved in so much activism. I really don't want to give my children a dying planet, but that's how it's going. We're gonna, inherit them a dying planet. And so we're like the old men planting trees, because I'll be 19 by the next election. So yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. Sophie.
I guess a message to anyone who's currently sitting on the fence as to whether the voting age should be lowered is that maybe you're not necessarily fearing change, but fearing the unknown. If you knew the future would be great, you'd welcome the change to get there. Well, the future can be great if we take steps in the now to make it happen. So let's proceed. Let's get the voting age lowered. Let's get people from all different areas within our society mobilised to continue the campaign, the Great Mahi that Make It 16 has done to this point. And yeah, let's embrace the fact that the future can be so much brighter than it is now.
Yes, amazing. Apollo, would you like to leave us with some thoughts too?
Yeah, I just we're doing some planning for the future at the moment in our local board. 10-year planning, 20-year planning, 30-year planning. These are things that we might not enjoy ourselves, the ones that are in the decision making. Why not put yourself in there? You guys are the ones that are gonna live in that future, and not some of us. So it's really important that we have you guys as part of that decision making and including the voting. So yep, go for it.
Namahi. And Moko, final thoughts.
Yeah, kia ora. Hey, thank you very much for this opportunity. I think about the Māori word for youth is rangatahi, which means to weave together. The Māori word for a leader is rangatira, which means to weave a group of people. It means the exact same thing. Rangatahi are rangatira. You are the leaders today. Honestly, all of you, you articulate yourselves so bloody well. You make me nervous to even speak. I'm like, oh, I better think of some big words to try and say. You could all own these spaces that myself, Soph, and Apulu all sit in right now, and you'll do probably a far better job than hundreds of our colleagues across the country. You're ready for it. Let's just do it.
Tautoko.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, so we're very near the end of our panel tonight, and honestly, I can't thank each and every one of you enough. I have learned so much, and I've heard lots of different perspectives and lots of different things I haven't considered before about lowering the voting age, and I'm hoping that for those of you listening at home that you have also felt the same, and it's opened up your minds a little bit. So if you are still interested in the Make It 16 campaign in their mahi, click the link that Amy has sent in the chat. You can find the Instagram, Make It 16 NZ, so more social media, I imagine. If you want to know more about Generation Hope, we also have an Instagram page. That's possibly how you found this amazing panel here. And of course, each of the politicians have their own platforms, and so yeah, absolutely, I'm sure they would love to hear from you about your views and opinions if you have more to add to this conversation. So just a massive thank you to you all. You are all very appreciated, and I can't thank you enough. I'm saying that a lot, but you're all amazing and incredible rangatahi and politicians and people, and it's been really a pleasure to share this space with you. So that concludes our Why Vote panel. I think that's the Keith, if we can close with a karakia.
Oh yeah, bow your heads again. Kia whakaria te tapu, kia wātia ai te ada, kia turiki whakataka ai, kia turiki whakataka ai, hui e tai ki e.
Kia ora. Ngā mihi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our panel. Keep an eye out for more Youth Week events, and we'll see you out there. See ya.